I'm the doctor. I'll be your victim this evening. Are you my mummy? Mummy on the Orient Express. I have been so excited to get back to this one. It's been too long since I've rewatched it front to back. It's so good. It is so good. The premise, the pacing, the performances, the central conceit, the resolution. It is so good. It is a wonderful mix of an incredibly campy premise, yet treating it seriously. Because honestly, the title, Mummy on the Orient Express, that should be right up there with Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, which I actually like that episode, but it does lean more into sort of the camp nature that you'd expect from a title like that. This doesn't. This treats it quite a bit more seriously without being overly dour or maudlin. But it's taking a preposterous premise of a mummy on the Orient Express
in space,
and it just runs with it. I love this episode. It's absolute gold. And this is mainly going to be just me gushing. Like, know that. Understand that. That's what will happen from pretty much here on out. Right from the beginning, I love that it opens with start the clock. And we see that is a brilliant touch, by the way. The fact that the counter is on screen the whole time. That, first of all, that beats the heck out of the traditional cut to a counter. Just have it there. Is there an actual reason why it's there? Is there a diegetic reason why it's there? No, who cares? You watch the time tick away, not by cutting away from the action, but right in the corner of your vision the whole time. It's right there. Plus, I really love that they had the tenths of a second in addition, because the doctor solved it after it had rolled over to 0, but there were tenths of a second left.
0.
And now, see, normally solving something that close to the wire, I would scoff and be like, oh, God, of course. But you know what? It works when you've been watching that counter go down the whole time. Where it doesn't work is they're working on something, they solve it, and you cut to a timer and there was 1 second left. Even if they time the edit of the thing where it is in real time, however long it was said to be, that's still not going to work for me. But here, being there, feeling the tension as the clock winds down and you're watching it wind down, oh, mwah, genius. And like I said, they don't even bother trying to justify why the counter's there. They just put it up. And they put it up before you even know what it is. Perfect. Because there are times where you break the rules, you put in something that you don't have an in-universe reason for having, because it makes the story better. That clock makes the story better. So not only do I love that clock, I love that that is the cold open. That is how we start. I enjoy the execution of the vibe of this being a last trip, in theory. Now, I did mention at the end of the previous review that it frustrated me that after this big blow up between the Doctor and Clara, that she just goes on one more trip with him. And I think I said something to the effect of, if somebody is that hurtful to you and you feel that they've abused you emotionally that much, you don't go on effectively one more date. That's not healthy. I had forgotten that somebody calls Clara out on that. I forget the name of the woman that she's with for most of this story, but that woman does, Clara says, one more go, you know how it is. And she's like, no, people don't do that. Not if they're really planning to leave. So I'm relieved that it was brought up in episode, because if it wasn't commented upon, that would have really bothered me. So even though I still feel like it's a little off, coming immediately off of the end of Kill the Moon and that big argument scene, they do at least acknowledge it, which I did not remember. And that helps. Part of what I like about the whole one final trip angle of it is there's a really, for lack of a better way to put it, sweet awkwardness between the Doctor and Clara, where neither of them is quite sure how to behave, because this is, another adventure for them, but it's also supposed to be the last one. Should we be doing this differently? Should we be behaving as if it isn't going to be the last time? And that awkwardness permeates their early scenes together, and that's really well done. The guest cast in this one is also really, really good. Highlight for me is Perkins, the engineer. Like, he's one of those characters that's so good, I'm like, if you had tagged along and become a companion, I would have been totally good with it. I like that he is intelligent and quick-witted, but also very blue-collar. Very, lower decks kind of a personality. And he's just so good interacting with Capaldi. He's not the only good performance, though. The guy who's the professor who knows about the foretold, he's quite good and quite a dynamic performance, as well as he sees this thing. He sees this thing coming towards him, and he knows what it is, and he's trying to be helpful. He's trying to relay the information, and he's trying to hold it together, but he cracks. And even though he knows all the stories, he knows that the begging, the bargaining, none of it works. And he does it anyways. It's very human. And then, contrasting that with the captain, who does hold it together. And the captain has has an acknowledged history of PTSD, so you would think he'd be the more likely one to crack. But instead, he knuckles down and he relays as much information as he can right up to the end. I love that. I tend to forget about him, but I actually rather like Gus. That's the computer. I really like the vocal performance on him. There's something... I use this same comparison when talking about the robots in Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. I'm making more comparisons to that one than I would have expected. Where the way that he speaks, which is he's still very functional as a computer, as a machine, in terms of what he's doing, but he has this intonation and this personality in the way that he says it that feels very Douglas Adams to me. And I really like that, because I feel like more often than not, when robots or machines or computers are given personalities, they're then basically treated as if they're human. And they behave as if they were human. Whereas here, the computer behaves very computer-like, very robotic. But the delivery and the voice has a little personality, has a little inflection. Thank you very much for your assistance. That sort of dry announcements on a train voice, but just with a little bit of personality injected. I really do like it. I also really love, especially now, knowing that the Doctor is going to become more personable during Capaldi's run, and that he is going to loosen up over time. Knowing that this is not going to be how he is forever, I am able to enjoy much more than I did upon first viewing the fact that the Doctor is pragmatic to the point of being very, very cold and very unfeeling. Like, he knows these people are going to die. He's not going to comfort them. He's not going to lie to them. He's not even going to pretend that he's choked up about it. He accepts it as a given. They're going to die. How can they help so maybe other people don't? That level of pragmatism from him makes a lot of sense for this Doctor, particularly at this stage in his tenure. And I like the way it's played, because even though he kind of shuts off his own emotions, the determination is still there. He doesn't not care, but he accepts immediately when something's already a lost cause. He doesn't rail against it. He accepts it instantly, which is a little bit different from the Doctor, to be that pragmatic, because there have been other incarnations of the Doctor who are very much there's always a way, I'll find a way, there has to be something, and then if it goes wrong, they get very upset. Whereas this Doctor, I mean, basically, someone seeing the foretold is things going wrong. That person's going to die. And he just takes that as a given. Well, okay, I can't save you, but please help. And not even with much of a bedside manner, which I think gets noted by the captain. Calls him out on his bedside manner. And actually, since I mentioned the captain, let's talk about something that, given my frustration with this element in this series up to this point, I was surprised how well it worked here. And I think it really does show the difference in level of the execution episode to episode. The element of soldiers. Because we've had that as a recurring thing. The Doctor keeps encountering soldiers over and over again. And he's very dismissive and rude to them. Whether they be Danny or the people in Into the Dalek. He has no time for soldiers. He seems to have no respect for soldiers. But he does show a measure of respect towards the captain, who used to be a soldier, and he shows a level of understanding and remorse towards the Foretold, the mummy, upon realizing that it's a soldier loaded up with tech that won't let it die. And this is integrating the thematic, how the Doctor relates to soldiers and military people, way better and with so much more nuance. Because this is a case where both of the people who are or were soldiers are problems at various points. The captain is initially an obstacle. The captain initially tries to stop the Doctor from looking into it. Now, he comes to, in his own words, like 3. It's 3 people have to die before I start taking you seriously. And then he just goes forward. But he is initially an obstacle. And obviously, the Foretold being a soldier, it's effectively the villain of the piece. But both are treated with a lot more nuance by the Doctor. Not just by the story, by the Doctor. And this is weaving these themes and these recurring elements so much better. So that it's not coming off as this clunky, soldiers thing that it's been most of the times it's come up in this series. Which has been so frustrating for me. Like, you've seen me get really worked up about that. So it was funny to see it turn up here in a way that, like, not only am I okay with, I think is really well done. So I think it shows there wasn't necessarily an inherent problem with the concept of the Doctor having a complicated or adversarial relationship with soldiers. It's just it was not done well in the instances where it came up prior to this. We'll see if it gets done well in other instances after this. So after all this gushing, do I have any nitpicks? Do I have anything that doesn't quite work? Yes. Although one thing isn't necessarily the fault of this episode, the other one I'm not even sure is necessarily a bad thing, but I don't like it. So even these criticisms are very soft criticism. The first is, while I like Gus, and I mentioned that, the Doctor says, he's trying to figure out who sent Gus or who initialized him or something like that. And we don't find out in this episode. And to my memory and a very brief, admittedly, Google search, that never pays off. So that was, I don't know if it was something that was supposed to and they never circled back to it or decided it wasn't worth doing, or if there was just an assumption, maybe we'll do something with that later, and they just never did, but it ends up being a dangling plot thread that doesn't go anywhere. Not that I necessarily needed it to. That wasn't a burning question in my mind, why Gus went for the Doctor or how he knew who the Doctor was. I don't necessarily need answers to that, so I'm not mad at it for being an unanswered question. I'm annoyed at it for bringing it up if nothing was going to be done with that later. The other thing that frustrates me has a bit to do with Clara. So at the front end, I really liked that Clara spoke to Danny on the phone. Danny knew where she was. I liked that interaction. But then by contrast, I really hate that at the end, she lies to him and to the Doctor. She tells Danny, yeah, that was definitely my last trip. I'm definitely done. and then tells the doctor, Danny said it's okay for me to keep traveling with you. She has now lied to both of them. She is now effectively, not romantically, but effectively, as far as breakage of trust goes, cheating on Danny with the doctor, and the doctor doesn't know that he is now the other man that she is spending time with that she isn't supposed to be. So she is lying and being deceptive and cheating on Danny. Again, like, I don't mean romantically. I mean in terms of the kind of breach of trust. It is effectively cheating on Danny and is making the doctor unknowingly complicit in that. And that's not necessarily a bad thing from a writing standpoint. But it does make me hate Clara. Again, I didn't like Clara in Series 7 because she was undercharacterized. She was more of a plot point than a character. I was liking her in Series 8 because they developed her as a character. They properly characterized her, and I liked that characterization. Now, this is still characterizing her, so now she's not undercharacterized, but the characterization they've now decided the direction to take her in, I don't like her as a person now. And part of that is my own baggage and my own feelings and comfort level with watching somebody knowingly deceive their romantic partner the way that she's doing. That's not a comfortable thing for me personally to watch, and it's really not comfortable if it's a character that you actually want me to like and to sympathize with, because I don't. Because at this point she has made the decision to hurt Danny. That is a choice she has made. And yet you can make whatever argument you want. Well, she thinks he won't find out what... It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if she thinks she's going to get away with it. In her mind, she's doing something that she knows will hurt him. Whether he ever finds out or not, she has made the choice to hurt him. And that makes me not like her as a person. And that kind of puts me back at ground zero with Clara again. And there was progress being made in terms of me, liking her a bit more. Ah, well. Mummy on the Orient Express, still a phenomenal episode. What do you think about it? Have you rewatched it lately? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something on down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Usual stuff, you know what it is. I've got a Patreon. That's kind of the big one. It helps keep the lights on and ensure that I can eat. But even if you're not able to do that, liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing this video are all helpful. So that would be greatly appreciated, but you don't have to do any of it. I would appreciate it, but at the end of the day, you're the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.